Hello, my name is Frances Fox, and I'm glad to be here with you today. The lighting is not quite right, but today it's very difficult to get everything right. There's an awful lot going on in the other dimensions, there's an awful lot of new things. So I'll chit chat for a minute while we wait for the several hundred people that did sign up for this. My name is Frances Fox. I'm a trained remote viewer. Since I was a child, I was trained in the alternative, what you call psychic skills. I lived for a year in Tibet. I'm aligned with my mission, which is very important today. People have a need to feel that they're doing something for humanity. And it makes sense because we are starting a new cycle, a new paradigm that is all about the other dimensions and human evolution. I have a degree in political science, and I ran a successful business, which is still doing well today, 50 years later. I know how to build strong foundations. There's other things in business that I'm not that good at, such as accounting. But I know all about the business world because I have been in it since actually my first business card I had at age 13. It's with great pleasure that I can say that I have been able to mix the two loves of my life, which are business and spirituality, and earn a living, and increasingly get the type of respect the kind of work that I'm involved with deserves. But we're not here to get you sold on being spiritual. We're here to make sure that you can keep your prosperity or become prosperous regardless of the craziness that's going on in the business world and the complete chaos that's in the other dimensions. I'm not sure that you're aware of it, but science says that there are 20 dimensions. And they're absolutely sure that there are 11, but they say there really are 20. Our laws really apply to only the first 3 or 4. And that's becoming increasingly an issue because those dimensions are being revealed and those dimensions have a way of impacting us increasingly. So I could start this masterclass, which is to give you a hint of the online course that we hope that you purchase, by saying that we are in a change of paradigms. We're in a new cycle. We're in the middle of a collapse of a paradigm. And doing business the old way is no longer working. Just starting with the fact that if you're not aligned with your mission, you don't love what you're doing, it's going to be increasingly difficult for you to be successful. The previous paradigm was based on a hierarchy with the important guys at the top, very few of them, and at the base of the triangle, you had everybody else supporting the people at the top. People at the bottom are not supporting anybody any longer. They want to be taken care of. They don't want to be looking after the guy at the top. They no longer respect the guy at the top. This is a huge paradigm shift, and we see it in the rioting in the streets, the lack of respect for authorities. This is not going away. That order is never going to be reestablished. And all of our religions tried to tell us that. In the Bible, it says, "And the meek shall inherit the earth." So if you have a business that is not going with this current flow, which is totally new, you're going to increasingly struggle, and the chances of you being able to stay afloat are not going to be very good. We've also entered the age of Aquarius. We're not into it fully. The age of Aquarius is about community, brotherhood, good things for everyone. It's also about an incredible augmentation of mental illness and an incredible augmentation of technology, which people have not been aware, but now we are increasingly that the augmentation of technology is triggering the augmentation of mental illness. So that's another thing that you have to look at, having to do with your spaces. You cannot have incredibly radiated spaces because you're going to have people on their way to mental illness. And most people don't know that, but in Chinese medicine, and I believe in Ayurveda also, the oldest medicines on the planet, they know that a hot head is the start and the basis for mental illness. And what is that darn cell phone doing to us? It makes our head hot. It's no wonder that 20-some% of our children are being classified today as mentally ill. The definition of the word prosperity surprises everybody. It doesn't mean to have riches or money in the bank. It means to have what you need. Because we're in such an unusual place on the planet, you're probably better off intending on being prosperous than intending on being rich. Because if you have a lot of money, but there's nothing to buy, that doesn't work. So the definition of prosperity is perfect for this time, because what it's saying is, if you intend that, you're going to be able to have what it is that you need at any given time. And that you need can change, but it's all right because you intended on prosperity, you anchored prosperity, you created prosperity, which means you're always going to have what it is that you need in that particular moment, in that particular chaos, or in that particular new situation, new type of business, etc. So going with prosperity in terms of what you would call a mantra or intention is very important. We look at a place like Venezuela, where they had so much money, so much oil, they don't have prosperity any longer, and they don't have oil. The people can't get gasoline for their cars. It doesn't make any sense, but it's happening. So we have to be very aware of these changes and make sure that we're aligning with them. We are also exiting the age of information. Before, if you were going to get into a business, get all the information, gather all that data, and you have all this information on your clients and the type of business, but we left the age of information and we're entering the age of transformation. People want change. They can't live the way they lived before. You need to know that when it comes to your product and when it comes to your employees. It's not all about numbers anymore. It's about feelings and it's about spirituality. And again, this was talked about eons ago. Last year, in working with huge companies, I was asked to give a proposal. And I already understood the issues the companies were having. And I put together a proposal, which is now, we call it our Fox multidimensional business plan. Because I knew that I couldn't help these companies unless I was able to tackle the issues in the other dimensions, which are not the kind of issues that you're even allowed to talk about in a boardroom. But again, the kind of people that I pitch to and that can actually hear me are generally not very corporate types. It's more family-owned businesses and individuals that are allowed to think independently with a wider lens, and that are allowed to include things that make sense to include today. It's not an attitude of coloring outside the lines because you feel like it. It's because the important stuff is happening outside of those lines, which in this case, we're talking about dimensions. Yes, we're going into a very spiritual time, but in terms of that spirituality, there are beings in the other dimensions that have always been there, that have always bothered us, but that we've not been allowed to deal with other than on Sunday. In terms of the business plan that I put together, that you should read up on it, the link is on everything that we put out having to do with business. There's a link to it, the Fox Multidimensional Business Plan. You need to read up on it. And just the simplest example of that I can give you is a building goes up, a shopping center goes up, and it just doesn't work. And there's no good explanation. People go, it's probably an Indian burial ground. It probably was. Spiritual basis for issues, or as happens with 2 shopping centers in Miami that keep opening up, grand openings, total remodeling, etc., and then they collapse. When the 2 businesses, the actual structures were being built, the people were arguing with each other, the contractor, the architect, the owner. They argued to the death, and that energy was built into these shopping centers. The intention of business, of money, of sales was not built into the structures. was into the structures was fighting and anger and hatred and conflict. And the two structures have not been able to make it, regardless of the several times they've spent multi-million dollars on them. That is an example of looking at the other dimensional factors in terms of your business, but it doesn't have to be a shopping center. It can be your office. And I'm outside of my outline for today's masterclass, but if I try to stay within the outline, I may end up losing my way in terms of interesting stories, which is the way that I teach. Your location, what's around it, and what was in that location before and how well they did or how poorly they did has everything to do with your business. I did a lecture several years ago talking about other factors in terms of business, and I was astounded at the number of times when a question was asked that my response was, the problem is you're carrying on what happened to the previous tenants of that location. And we all know the stories about a corner where there's a restaurant and it closes, and there's another one and it closes, another, and then the third one was really good food. Why does it close? And then the fourth one, there's an energy of failure there that was never cleared. So in terms of what you can learn from us with this multidimensional angle that we are going to share with you and are sharing with you, you will pay attention to that. You won't move into a place to later on say, what happened? Just to find out then that the previous tenants went through exactly the same thing. So before you're going to rent a place, you ask, what happened there? How did the company do? How did that business do? Did the partners get along? You find out everything that you can, because you are going to be living that energy unless you purify the location, and sometimes that's not quite so easy. The reason why it's important to widen your lens to include the other dimensions is because you are multidimensional. We have known this forever. We have a series of energy bodies. All of us have these energy bodies. There is no exception. And I'm not going to go into detail because that's in the course. But I'm just going to say that you have an energy body called your astral body, which you've probably heard of, that flits around at night when you sleep. And then you know that when you die, a lot of people can see your spirit. Most people don't know that that is your astral spirit, and it's part of you before you die. It just gets released from your physical body once you die, but it's with you, it's part of you, it's supposed to be integrated with you before you die. And if it is very aligned with you, you're much stronger and it's much harder to knock you down. You're much more clear-headed. And my favorite example of that is when they say, may the force be with you. Star Wars, we're talking about business. We're talking now about multidimensionality being revealed increasingly and actively incorporated into your decisions. May the force be with you. What does that mean? It means that your astral spirit is very aligned with your physical body so that both of them are pointed in the same direction. What is an example of that not happening? The polls that say that 70-some% of employees are not committed to their jobs. And you and I know the percentage of people that simply cannot tolerate their jobs or don't enjoy their jobs. And statistically, 15% of employees are so angry at having that job that they sabotage their employers. That means that that person is showing up to work, doing what they're supposed to be doing, but their astral spirit is very unhappy. And you, as the owner, the co-worker, the partner, are going to pay a big consequence. You cannot say that the force is with you in terms of your business, in terms of your sales plan, because the astral spirit of the people around you, and maybe even yourself, is not really aligned with the intentions of the business. So be learning about your multidimensional self and then applying it to your business is basically the only way people are going to make it in the future. Before, 40 or 50 years ago, they would say, leave your emotions at the door. People are not doing that. They're coming to work very angry. In order for you to deal with that, being it that so many people are unhappy, you need to be able to provide stress management techniques that are very simple and very easy and very effective. That's what we teach you in the last module in the course. Types of mental yoga that are astoundingly effective and easy and kind of fun. It's not like you have to pay a ton of money and bring in specialists and consultants to be able to train the staff. It's stuff that people can almost learn on their own and apply to their lives at home. People need to understand today, yourself included, that you may be doing something that is really not what you would prefer to be doing. But you need to pay your bills. We all need to be real. But rather than getting angry at it, in the course, we suggest a particular mantra that is super simple. I mean, you can do it, within 5 minutes, you will feel a massive change in your attitude towards your job or your company or your coworkers. And you'll be able to work more effectively because somehow this particular mantra gives you the faith that, yeah, you have to do this now, but it's going to be okay in the long run. You're going to be able to get what you want, which is job satisfaction. All these things that are considered psychological and spiritual probably have always been important, but never the way they are today. Without dealing with that aspect of your business and that aspect of your client, not just your employees or your business partner, it would be very difficult to make it. We're suggesting something that I've been teaching for several years that I learned when I was very young, which is that you learn to create magic. In the business world, what are we talking about? We're talking about black magic, we're talking about curses, we're talking about voodoo. Well, those people actually do know how to do magic. We're not talking about that, we're talking about magic, but with the intention of applying it to your business, to your product, to your sales. But what's the definition of the word magic? Magic means, I will read it, to be able to have power. It doesn't mean playing games with people or tricks where you hide things. It means to have power. And today, too many people feel powerless. That's why they're so frustrated. So understanding the definition of magic and understanding how to create magic in your business life is very important, and we can do that. And we do that in our program, Money Magic. How can we do that? Because we are an observer, a trained remote viewer. We put together the two things. We observe people who do magic, such as a karate student that breaks a concrete block with their hand. That's magical. And yet we accept it. We're going to teach you how to do that, but having to do with your business life. It all has to do with the mind and focus. And I'm very fortunate that I'm able to see how the mind reconfigures when you have an intention. And we'll be teaching you that and encouraging you to get more training, which doesn't mean spending big bucks at all. You can train on your own. It's your own mind. It's with you. It's at home. But how to train yourself so that you can keep your focus on what it is that you want. The issue of focus is huge. That's why your environment is so important. If you have an environment where the other dimensions are chaotic because you live in a haunted business space, it's very hard to keep your focus. It's also very hard to be prosperous, to have money, etc. So the keeping of focus is central But what's around you in terms of what can transfer you is incredibly important for you to be able to keep that focus. But just the fact that we're going to be able to show you exactly what happens when a karate master or student breaks a board, and for you to see how simple it is going to help you to understand that you will be able to overcome the obstacles. But let me remind you again, you need to love what you're doing. Because overcoming obstacles to sustain a company or a product that you don't even like is not going to work anymore, because we are in revelations. And in revelations mean to unveil, to lift the veils, to reveal. And that you feel towards your product or your company, your customers, your clients, they're going to know it. You're going to be missing a quality that is going to be noticeable. And nobody's going to be able to understand why, but it's not going to go well. So you have to be committed and you have to love it. That does not mean that you do not take our course because you have a job you don't really love. We are in the age of transformation. Most people want a change, and we will teach you how to create that change. What it is that's blocking you, we're not going to tell you what it is that you should be doing. That can happen simply by the correctly worded mantra. But we'll teach you how to get there with a tool that costs nothing, which is the structure of your mind, your human mind, which is the same tool that the karate master uses, and the same tool that the woman uses who sees her son under the wheel of a car that weighs 7,000 pounds, and she's overweight and has never done weights in her life, and she goes ahead, picks up the car, saves her kid. That's magic, which means she has power. She's able to do it. Why? For focused intention. And it happens throughout history continuously. We're going to teach you to do that, to keep your intention. We're going to teach you to keep your intention and your focus, even if you turn on the TV set and the world is falling apart. Because we have been told at this time in written human history that you can create the reality that you want, even if everything is in a state of collapse. I think the Mayans said that, so did the Bible, and so did other religions. So the fact that everything is collapsing doesn't mean that you can't do well. And there is where we come in to the focused intention, to where you can create repeatable acts of magic. I know this is sounding very ethereal and very spiritual. I ran a business that still exists today. I'm doing a business today, and I work with powerful businesses today and teach them how to do this. It's not a theory. And if you read the document on the multidimensional business plan, everybody reads it, and rather than going, what's this woman talking about? They just kind of settle down and they let it sink in. What this woman is talking about is stuff that has always been in the other dimensions, has always affected us, and that has been revealed in religions and people that are psychic, and in terms of today is revealed by my remote viewing, and where I can share it to very effectively. We're in a very interesting time in which nobody knows what's going to happen next. So one of the things that you need to learn to be is very flexible. If you're stuck on the way you used to do things, it's going to be very hard for you to be able to stay standing with all the waves of totally unexpected change. I mean, today, a couple of days ago, there's now a huge ship stuck in the Suez Canal, which is a bottleneck to international business. $9 billion a day. That can't happen. And they don't know how they're going to get the ship unstuck. That's 1 minute to the next. That's just one example of many, many things that happen and that can happen. where you need to train yourself to have the appropriate reaction of, oh my God, because you're not supposed to repress. And then when you talk about it, you see in the news, you share, you're horrified, you go right back to your intention to be prosperous in the midst of this particular chaos, whatever it happens to be that day or that week or that month. I'm going to say it again. The Bible, the Mayans, and other religions have said that at this time in human history, there will be a great divide in people. And some are just going to kind of fall off the edge of the world, and others are going to be fine. In order for you to be fine, you have to understand what's going on in the other dimensions, because that is where it is going on. You have places in your body, and I'm laughing because I love to use the word zip code. I went on a trip many years ago, a trade mission, and we were in Paris, and everybody was waiting and for a particular person who took very long to come downstairs. When she came downstairs, she says, I don't travel well outside of my zip code. And she was from Miami, and we were in Paris. And I always laughed about that zip code joke. In your physical body, there is a zip code that you need to pay attention to, because it has a lot or everything to do with your prosperity. The root of your body, totally the bottom part of the trunk of your body, has everything to do with prosperity. And that part of you, which is called the chakra and energy center, affects your legs and your hips. And if you have certain ailments, it means that that energy center is not doing well, and that energy center has everything to do with prosperity. So you can go there, find out those things in that energy center, start to fix it. The aromatherapy, the type of different therapies that you can use, craniosacral, whatever, and you will be working on your prosperity. So finding out the zip codes on the physical that are associated with your prosperity is pretty important. Other dimensional energies, not just valid, but totally supporting or not supporting of your intention to be prosperous. So we will give you that, and we will give you a map of those energy centers, and also some oils that we will recommend so that you can kind of start to prime them and learn about them. One of the things that's great about this multidimensionality is that it's a lot more fun than a traditional way of looking at things, because it's not based on the hierarchy. You can go to the internet once you find out something, like your solar plexus is an energy center associated with personal power. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that you better have the organs associated with that energy center in good order, or you're not going to have personal power. And how can you expect to do well in business? So you can find out the organs associated with that. You can do it on the internet. We'll probably, if you ever ask us a question in one of our chats, you can ask them, you'll find out immediately. And then you go, oh my God, I have problems with diabetes. Personal power. And it makes it a challenge. Oh darn, I need to pay more attention to what I'm supposed to eat or not eat. Because that part of you is what generates personal power. We need to talk about transference of energy. We talked about it having to do with your spaces. But how about your coworkers? This is something that has come up in the 50 years that I've done business. This is a constant theme. You have an employee who performs really well. The person's hateful. They don't look like they're hateful. They're performing. Meanwhile, everybody around them is irritable and snappy and questioning everything. That person can be transferring, without knowing it, their repressed rage internally. And it's showering over the people that are around them. There's things that you can do to take care of that. And you need to do that. You need to turn that around so that you don't have that one person who you can't fire because she's performing, but in the other dimensions, she's dragging down the rest of the staff. So the other dimensional components are very important. The issue of exhaustion and radiation, nobody wants to talk about the radiation. We need to talk about it a second. I was working for a company and I was working with the sales staff individually. And the intention of what I was doing, you always have to set your intention. My intention was, and of course the owner was absolutely, that's what to find out what was blocking each and every salesperson from having higher sales. I don't know if it was 5 or 6 people. Let's say it was 6. 5 out of the 6, what was blocking their ability to sell more was that they were sleeping with their cell phone. How could that be? One of the evidences that they are affected, their mind and their body's getting affected, is that they would wake up with a dry mouth. Radiation is other dimensional. A dry mouth usually starts to happen when you're over 70 or 75, and after that you start to have health issues. We're talking about women that were in their 30s and 40s. But what was astounding was, and I consider myself a very good psychic, was that what was blocking their increased sales, sleeping with their cell phones. Who would have ever known that? If I hadn't been an experienced remote viewer, I would have never known that. I would have suspected it, but I wouldn't have known it. So radiation, transferences of energies, spirits, thought forms that have been left from previous businesses that went out of business are other dimensional and not only can affect you, they absolutely will determine your destiny. You can keep focused intention and start to clear. There are people that you can pay, there's products, there's sensory therapies that we recommend that are sound and images that are great for purifying. Much easier today than before because we hadn't discovered the sensory therapies, but you still have to use them. One of them is an 8-hour-long video of dolphins swimming in water, but with a sound that starts to repair what the sound of Wi-Fi damages. So there's things that you could do, but in order to do them, you have to know that you have that problem. In order to know you have that problem, you have to accept and respect other dimensional factors. I'm going to check the time because I love what I do and I love sharing and teaching. And sometimes I can go on and on. So give me a moment. Okay. You need to read the multidimensional business plan. There's an entire section of it that has to do with spirits. Spirits that are attached to people and spirits that are attached and haunt places. We have a service that we offer, which is an analysis of your aura via your photograph. The cost is $100. I used to give appointments for an hour, and then people had endless questions, and after the appointment was over, they still had more questions. And once I started to do the analysis of the photograph, people have practically no questions. Because when I sketch it, I'm sketching a root cause that's generating all those issues that you have the questions on. But I'm identifying the root cause. That's a generic analysis that we're doing, but we just came up with a new product that I think that you should sign up for. It's $200, and you send your photograph. I'm a little bit, I have a lot of work. I'm a little bit like, do I really want to do this? Yeah, we need to do this. But my intention when I look at your photograph is different from my intention when I have done this analysis, which I've done hundreds of, if not thousands, my intention is to identify what's blocking your prosperity, which is going to be different than simply my intention of finding the worst stuff that's going on with you in your life. So you go, well, why can't you find the worst stuff that's going on with me in my life in that same analysis for prosperity? Because it's two different things, because the intentions are different. Intention is everything, and it creates a filter to psychic abilities. So it's not that it's filtering out something that I should be telling you. It's that your intention, if you order the analysis at $200 for what's blocking your prosperity, is different than the other one, which is looking for the deepest injuries. Because maybe your deepest injury is not blocking your prosperity, but is actually supporting your prosperity. Maybe you're deeply injured and you're so anxious that you work and work and work, and that's part of your prosperity. So that's not going to come up if my intention is to analyze your block to prosperity. See how important intention is? In terms of those blocks to prosperity, a big one, which not that many of you, thank God, will have, is ancestral curses, which is even in the Bible. So it's not like we're trying to color out outside the lines and drag you out there. It's been part of life forever. Not that many of you could have that, would have that. It's not that usual. But there is an awful lot of black magic being done. And I have to say that if you do big business, or if you're at the top of your industry, or you earn a lot of money, or you're a public person, it would be advisable to check to see if any of that kind of dirty tactics is going on to keep you down. Even the ancient civilizations, Egypt, the Incas, the Mayas, whatever, that was part of the order of the day. Something, excuse me, something that I have people that say, I don't want to deal with that. And I say, okay, well, I can't help you. Because if you have a curse and I'm trying to help you, I am dealing with a wall that is stopping me from achieving my intentions with you. And I'm not going to deal with that wall. If your belief system doesn't include that, I don't have a problem with that. I didn't believe in that, any of this having to do with that type of magic, negative magic, until the 90s. But I am not going to waste my time, because I like to be effective. If you're going to pay me, then I need to be able to do my job, and I cannot do it against that. What am I saying? In the course, we don't talk that much about it. What I'm saying to you is that that's something that you need to look into, because in the other dimensions, there are enemies that do not identify themselves or appear to be enemies on the physical dimension. Here we go back to the whole multidimensionality. Whether it's your private life, and now I'm teaching you in terms of business life. These are things that I've always dealt with people, but very select group of people that don't speak openly about these things. But a lot of governments, let's talk about Venezuela. Venezuela, it's openly known that the last two governments used a lot of remote influence, which is another word for black magic, in order to control. So it's increasingly popular to use these multidimensional tools, and it really bothers me, because it's very unfair, because a lot of people simply don't have the education. They're not aware. They don't know. So this course will widen your lens to where you're going to be able to perhaps not be able to identify it yourself, but you're going to be aware and say, excuse me a second, let me see if there's something that I should. We're getting some unusual comments. This chat, by the way, is in English. And excuse me a second. Okay, so let me check my notes and see if there's something that I did not. The issue of exhaustion today needs to be addressed. People are coming to work and they really want to be someplace else. Okay, that's an issue. You have to learn how to get them hooked again in terms of commitment, and you can do that. But they're so tired that even what they love doing, they don't do. They don't go to parties anymore. They're dying to get home, so they crash in front of the TV set. How do you expect to run a prosperous company? How do you expect to increase your sales or to increase whatever if you're so tired the only thing you want to do is go lay down or sit down? The creativity, the market confidence, the energy that you need in order to prosper, especially in the midst of chaos, requires vitality. So you need to deal with it. I know, which most people won't accept, that the lack of vitality has to do with two things. The radiation, which literally is burning the other dimensions, the bodies that are there, and the fact that most people are working at a job that's not their mission. So you need to address that if you want to be able to have a staff that's all pointed in the same direction and actually has enough strength to walk in that direction. It's been a lot of years, again, more than 50 years, that I've been in business. Actually, I think longer than that, but I'm not going to admit what my age is. It's been so many years that I've been dying to tell people, regular people, listen, there's so much more that goes on, that if you just kind of looked at it and took care of it. And I'm going to end this masterclass with an example. Do you remember years ago when they had that phrase going postal? When people that worked at the post office were going out and murdering people? Do you remember that? It's happening today, but they're not postal workers. They're regular other people, but it's the same thing. And nobody understood what was going on. They spent millions on studies. One day I walked into the post office and it was a long line. I was bored, and when I'm bored, I'll shift my sight and I'll start looking at the other dimensions. Behind every single postal worker standing at his station, there was a huge spirit that was black. Huge. Black is depression. Obviously not a happy spirit. And that is what was behind each employee. They're telling me my camera. There. Did it come back on again? And I don't know how to turn off the chat so that people will stop making comments, which I would prefer that they. So these employees were, each and every one of them was struggling with a spirit that was bigger than they were. And then I realized they had gone through, postal workers go through a tremendous training. Stewardesses do too. A lot of people in service, to where they learn to smile. It doesn't matter what happens. And I know that every single one of us in that line was angry at the postal workers for not moving faster. Transfer of energy of our anger towards them. They absorb it. They cannot play it out. They have to swallow it. They get depressed. And then law of attraction. They attract a spirit of that size. So going postal obviously started in other dimensions, and if people had taken that into account and had done purifications of the other dimensions, that would have never happened. Today we have it happening, not with postal workers, but with a lot of different people getting so frustrated and so angry they're going out and murdering. Other dimensional factors which are not being taken into consideration. So widening the lens, finding out what's going on with you personally in terms of the zip code in your body where prosperity is, what's going on with your spaces, your business spaces. There's some funny things happening with the camera. I'm frozen. Okay, well, no, I have not left the room. Okay, so I'm just going to finish, and hopefully some of you are still there. You can be prosperous in the midst of chaos, but only if you understand that there's a change of paradigm, there's a collapse of the old one. We're in the age of Aquarius, in the age of transformation. People are not happy, therefore you have to deal with that. People are too tired, therefore you have to deal with that, your employees and yourself and your customers. So I hope you found it interesting enough. I will put, in case you actually are still with me, the link for the course, which is called Money Magic. And here we go. Give me a second and I will put it up here. And I appreciate you sharing this with me. We had several hundred people signed up, but I suspect that there have been problems with the connectivity, which is another issue that is other dimensional and that you're going to need to learn to deal with. Having a plan, what happens when there's a connectivity issue in terms of your business. When I work with very wealthy clients who have also political issues or safety and kidnapping issues, I tell them that they have to have plan A, plan B, and plan C. And plan A is everything's fine, everything's fine. Plan B is if you hear this news or if this happens, everybody call each other and start to make their way to the airports or to a house or whatever. And plan C is don't bother calling anybody. This happens, you get in your car, you go directly to the airport or to the farm or to whatever. Everybody needs to have that today, but you need to have it in business. What happens if there's no internet? You don't start asking questions then, you plan for it. Okay? You make it your intention to survive even in the midst of chaos. My name is Frances Fox, and I'm glad to have spent this time with you. Thank you.